There is a mission now in the January 2026 update to World of Warships Legends called Mer de Courage. Unfortunately, I completed the mission chain last night and it's disappeared now, so I can't actually show you the requirements to complete it. But I can tell you that you have to use French ships to complete every task, and at the end of the mission chain, you get the new French destroyer commander Charles Bléry. I'm probably completely butchering his name. We're just going to call him Chuck from here on out, since I can't pronounce French names or French words very well. This guy, though, is a gunboat destroyer commander and a free one, which gives him a leg up on Robin Le Fierce, who has existed for a little while as a French gunboat commander, but he was a special wargaming creation that you had to pay money for, so I assume a lot of people don't have him. Chuck, on the other hand, you can get him for free by just grinding through this mission. And if you enjoy French destroyers, particularly the original line, and if you have this destroyer, the Tier 8 Premium Marceau, this guy is going to be a good guy to get. We've got him at the helm of the Marceau now. I'll show you the build real quick as we enter the Bravo cap. And this game is a pretty decent game, I would say. It does involve a lot of farming with the main battery guns, but it is a bit of a blowout, which I don't normally like to show on YouTube. But after playing the Marceau over and over and over again with this guy at the helm, most of the matches I got were blowout matches in favor of the blue team. So just needed to show you one that lasted a little bit longer so you can get an idea of how good this guy is for the guns. Ultimately, I think Robin Le Fierce might be a slightly better choice. He's got more interesting, unique skills that do things like buff the fire chance. But this guy, if you don't have Robin Le Fierce, well, he's a very good choice indeed. And I'm not entirely convinced that Robin Le Fierce is actually better. Anyway, we'll go down his list of skills. I've already shown you the build. It's a free-to-play build with Bergamini and Sims as the inspirations in order to increase the survivability of the Marceau, because after all, it is more of an open-water gunboat, doesn't have any smoke screens, and it's not quite the same as something like the Khabarovsk, for example, which can be an open water gunboat at absurd ranges and has really, really flat shell trajectories, so they're easy to aim at longer ranges. Marceau, on the other hand, very floaty shells, smaller guns, absolutely lethal to destroyers at close range, and luckily the Jutland launched some torpedoes a little bit ago, so we simply observed the direction from which those torpedoes came, sailed there, and what do you know, here's the culprit. Are we going to hit him with one of our torpedoes? Probably not necessary to even launch those. No, we take him out with the guns. That's 16,000 HP from him gone. He, takes a fair bit of HP away from us in return, but we do have the heal that we can fall back on. And the only enemy destroyer has been eliminated, so now we have a distinct advantage. But as you can see, the Marceau, with this guy at the helm, is a fearsome gunboat. It is even without him. And the Jutland really stands no chance. We can just out-DPM him. Anyway, as for the skills on Chuck, in his first row, he's got a choice between Observant Range, which of course reduces main battery reload time at the expense of increasing the rudder shift. It's a 5% reload buff, 10% rudder shift nerf, and it increases torpedo acquisition range by 12%, meaning you spot enemy torpedoes a little bit earlier. I think you probably want to take this skill because the whole point of this guy is to build into the guns, and this is the main skill around which that kind of build is centered. But the other choices in the first row are Contact is imminent for more torpedo speed, not exactly useful when you've only got 6 km torps anyway, and then No Fly Zone for extra AA power, so definitely Observant Range. His base trait, I should mention that, it increases destroyer main battery range. I've got him maxed out at 16.4. The percentage buff for main battery range is 3%. Not quite as large as Rumbles, the Decepticon Transformer, who I think maxes out at a 6% buff to main battery range. But if you don't have Rumble, then this guy will give you a little bit of the same ability. Well, half the same ability, I suppose, to build into main battery gun range on other destroyers. if you want to use him as an inspiration. And then if you do have Rumble, I suppose you could create some meme builds. Maybe Rumble and Chuck together would be good inspirations for something like the Elbing, which has ridiculously nerfed main battery range at something like 10.2 or 10.7 km for no reason. We're going to have to test this guy alongside Rumble on the Elbing at a later time. Anyway, it also, the base trait, in addition to increasing the main battery range, increases main battery damage against destroyers by up to 4%. And I don't know what could be more valuable than that, honestly. Doing increased damage against enemy destroyers with your gunboat? Well, I think that's what you want. In the second row of skills, we've got Look at Me Now, Mortar, or Go All Out. Any of these I think would be good choices. I've opted for Look at Me Now. I've got no inspirations for Concealment, but I do have the Concealment mod on, and with Look at Me Now and the Concealment mod, 5.7 km detect on the Marceau, which I think is, fairly decent. In the fourth row of skills, we've got Back in Stock for more torpedo reload. Don't think you'd ever want to use that, really. But then we've got Twist and Track, Reaching Out, and Perceptive. I've opted for Reaching Out because in addition to increasing the destroyer main battery range by 8%, Reaching Out also reduces the destroyer main battery reload time by 3%. And then we get into the fourth row of skills, where he's got Sidestep, a very valuable skill if you want to build into destroyer main battery gun range. When it's fully maxed, it increases the main battery gun range by 10%, and then it also increases incoming fire dispersion by 5%. Maybe that means you'll be a little bit less likely to get hit by return fire from the enemy. Also nerfs the rudder shift though, so there is that, but I don't feel like it's too much of a problem on something like the Marceau. You could also, if you don't want to take Sidestep, opt for Destroy or Be Destroyed. I would not take that though. It does buff the destroyer speed by 7%, but it reduces Sigma by 10%. And it's not like destroyers are necessarily hurt by lack of accuracy, but I don't think you want to generally do anything to make it worse. I think if you actually took that skill, you would notice a difference in the accuracy, and you want more shells to land on the target than not. Alternatively, you could take his unique skill, which is found in the fourth row on the right-hand side. It's called Strong Diplomacy. I don't think this skill is necessary for the Marceau, but for the original French destroyer line like Kleber and Mogador and Le Fantasque, for example, well, they all have pretty slow base turret traverse. And this Strong Diplomacy skill buffs destroyer gun traverse speed by 3.2 degrees per second, which is pretty massive and really reduces the turret traverse time from, I think on the Kleber, I have the reload mod on there, and without any buffs to the turret traverse, it's like 21 seconds. If you take this Strong Diplomacy skill, it reduces it to something like 15.4 seconds. Pretty big buff to the turret traverse speed and very useful. Not for the Marceau, it already has fast turrets. But the other thing that the unique skill does is increase main battery reload booster duration by 22.5% when fully maxed. Of course, the Marceau doesn't have any main battery reload boosters, but the original French destroyer line does. And I've always thought they might need more than just 2 of them base, but maybe that's not so much a problem if you can buff the duration of the reload booster by 22.5%. That's almost like having an extra one with the extra duration it gives you, I suppose. But you could literally get an extra one if you wanted to use the legendary skill Fully Packed, which is found on this Chuck guy. I think he might be the only destroyer with Fully Packed in the legendary row. We haven't taken it, though. We've opted for Unstoppable, which I still think is more or less a mandatory skill on any destroyer commander, because it allows the engine repair time to be buffed by 15% and also allows for reduced mobility with a disabled engine and or rudder. In a gunboat like the Marceau, you don't want your engine or rudder disabled to the point where you can't move, especially since you don't have a smoke screen. You'll just be sunk very quickly if you're dead in the water. So I think you want to take Unstoppable. But the Fully Packed skill, maybe it would be okay on something like the Kleber. I've been kind of trying to test it. I was last night after I got this battle, but I ran into a situation where my engine was disabled. I couldn't move, and as a result, I took torpedoes that I otherwise could have dodged and got booted from the game and had to go back to port. So, unstoppable, still to this day, mandatory destroyer skill. But this guy does offer you a wide variety of choices, I suppose, that you can use to build into the already good gunpowder on the Marceau or on the original French destroyer line. I think it's well worth completing this mission chain, and it's entirely free. It's just gonna take whatever time it takes you to complete it. And to be fair, the update was released, what, 1 or 2 weeks ago, and I've just now completed it, but I haven't solely been playing French ships in that time. If you're just playing French ships for, a couple of play sessions, probably you'll be able to complete this mission pretty easily, and I would recommend that you do. You'll get a taste here of the farming capabilities of the Marceau. You can see that the shells are very floaty at range, so maybe using this guy to build into the range on this particular destroyer has less value than it would have on something like the Kleber, which has shells that are much easier to aim at range. But as for the specs on Marceau, with this build, we've got 13.8 kilometer main battery range on the guns. Now, to be fair, we are using the Epic Battle Booster flag, so that's part of it. But the reload time on these main battery guns is reduced to 3.3 seconds, and we've got the Epic Reload mod, so every 30,000 damage we do, we get another 2% buff to the reload, which turns us essentially into an 8-gun destroyer machine gun, basically. And, you can see there from that sequence against the 3 battleships, which do the thing that I always tell battleships never to do, which is group up all in the same grid square. Well, they're going to lose the game because my team spread out and took advantage of map control while they were all hanging out together and not accomplishing too much except being a demonstration for the firepower that the Marceau can put out with its main battery guns. Obviously, we've done damage with torpedoes in this game too. I think we've landed 4 of them, but we've also got 6 fires, 282 shells hit, and it ends up being a pretty good game, albeit somewhat of a blowout, where we end up top of the leaderboard with over 3,000 base XP. So not a bad result. Probably a lot of that comes from the ability to just dispatch the enemy Jutland with fearsome main battery firepower. By the way, the HE shell damage on the Marceau is 1850 base, but you get that buffed a little bit when shooting at enemy destroyers with this guy. So I'd say Chuck is well worth grinding for, especially if you have this ship or like the French destroyers generally. Hope you enjoyed the video. If so, give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.